Many Jews today feel the need for a Jewish renaissance. People are searching for a more vital and authentic mode of Jewish expression, and more than ever we need to shift not only physically but spiritually out of exile mode. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Legislation has been proposed in the Knesset which would mandate that there be only one chief rabbi as opposed to two, one Ashkenazi, one Sephardi. Does the Rav support this proposal?
There is no question that, given the present situation, that is to say, it being a given that there is a body called the Chief Rabbinate, Ha-Rabbanut HaRashit L'Yisrael, as it is presently constituted, that being a given, although being far from ideal, there's no question that proposing to have one Rav Rashi, one Chief Rabbi, as opposed to two for Ashkenazim and Sephardim, is a significant step forward. In other words, I personally think that it would be correct to dismantle the present institution known as the Chief Rabbinate of Israel and reconstitute something else in its place, and this for many reasons which I cannot address at this moment. But as I have pointed out in a previous interview, the very institution of the Rabbanut HaRashit in Israel, as we know it today more or less, is an invention of the British Mandate occupying forces here in what was then Palestine, so called by the British, going back to the years following the First World War. Historically, for many, many generations, the Jews in Eretz Yisrael had a chief rabbi, that is to say, a rabbi who was appointed by the Ottoman Turkish authorities, and he was responsible for different aspects of Jewish life, including also the raising and payment of taxes to the Ottoman authorities from their Jewish subjects in Eretz Yisrael. And because for many generations, almost without exception, the Jews living in Eretz Yisrael were Sephardim, it did not occur to anybody that there should be an Ashkenazi chief rabbi, as there was a Hacham Bashi, so it was called by the Ottomans. The Hacham Bashi was the forerunner of what we call today the Rishon LeZion, the Sephardi chief rabbi. As the number of Ashkenazi Jews in Eretz Yisrael grew in number, starting approximately 220, 230 years ago, but certainly a century ago, shall we say, it became more and more serious a demand which was heard from different quarters in Eretz Yisrael already, that just as the Sephardim have a Chacham Bashi, the Ashkenazim should also have their own rabbi in charge of religious affairs for Ashkenazi Jews. And this suggestion was adopted by the British, and so we ended up with this duplicate and superfluous system which serves to extend the reach of the Galut here back into Eretz Yisrael. This is unfortunately a mistake. And there are other reasons why I think the Chief Rabbinate should be dismantled in its present state, as it is presently constituted. But that is another discussion. At the present time, assuming that there is such a body, it is certainly not necessary and in no way constructive or beneficial to the Jewish people that there be two chief rabbis with two officers and two sets of secretaries and underlings and assistants, etc., etc., as well as all the aspects of the rabbinic bureaucracy in this country can be and should be dealt with by one body, one hierarchy, which deals with all the Jews in the country. If it were true that every separate Jewish Eidah, every ethnic group, required their own chief rabbi, then it would be perfectly reasonable for the Temanim to demand a third chief rabbi, and perhaps for the Jews of Persia to demand a fourth chief rabbi, etc. And this, of course, no one would support, and there is no reason why we should support the present system. But going beyond all of this, I think there is a further step which needs to be taken into account, a step beyond the present proposal, which needs to be considered. And that is the very concept of halakha for Ashkenazi Jews and halakha for Sephardi Jews. Of course, one could also speak about halakha for Temani Jews and halakha for Jews from North Africa as opposed to Jews from Syria and Iraq. This whole edifice of halachic thinking, which has grown up over many generations, has no real validity. Certainly it has no rigorous halachic logic, Torah logic to it. And in fact, it is based on the very dubious notion that a Jew must follow, in terms of halachic practice, he must follow the halachic practice of his father and his grandfather, for example. And this is simply not so. If this were the case, then the Baalei Tosafot, such as Rabbeinu Tam and Rashbam, would never have disagreed in their halachic positions and their Talmudic interpretations, that would never have disagreed with their grandfather Rashi. If this were the case, then the Rambam would never have disagreed with the Rif, etc., etc. The entire body of halachic literature, going back 2,000 years plus, proves, without a doubt, that in Am Yisrael there have always been great Hachamim, Torah sages, who have immersed themselves in the words of the Torah day and night for many, many years, usually for the best years and the most of the years of their life, and they have always been willing and in fact felt compelled to express their views unequivocally, without any feeling of pressure or being compelled to adapt and comply with a certain halachic practice or standard. Different Chachamim have always expressed different views, and this is the way of the world, this is how it should be. And the idea that Ashkenazi Jews must follow a specific psak halacha and Sephardi Jews must follow a specific psak halacha, a different one from those of the Ashkenazim, is intellectually simply dishonest and without basis. The fact that we have in the Shulchan Aruch, for example, we have the Bet Yosef and the Ramah, each of which poskim simply note, essentially they record for us, as it were, by way of halachic snapshot, they record for us the halachic practice of the Jews in their respective countries approximately 500 years ago or 600 years ago. That is without a doubt a fact. That is what most Jews in their respective parts of the world were doing at that time when they wrote their halachic works, such as the Bet Yosef or the Shulchan Aruch, when the Ramah added his annotations to the Shulchan Aruch, etc. But this in no way requires a Jew today to follow that specific halachic practice. A Jew should always do what the Mishnah in Masechet Avot tells us, and that is Aseh L'charav. A Jew should, he who is not capable of understanding and making such decisions for himself, must choose for himself a true Tamil Chachamim, a serious Torah scholar to whom he turns with all his Torah questions. That is what the Mishnah tells us, that is what Hazal recommended and instructed us to do, and that is the correct thing for us today as well. And therefore, what we should have today in Eretz Yisrael is a system of halacha which embraces all Jews from all backgrounds, which will also serve to unite and to galvanize the Jewish people for the present and the future. So this suggestion, in short, this suggestion is a step forward when compared to the terrible and inconsistent, irrational, and unproductive system that we have in place today. But it is only one step in the right direction. There are more steps, I believe, which can and should, and I believe in the fullness of time, will follow.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.